Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today we're gonna make these adorable little necklaces. They are fun and easy, and they would be a perfect item to make for a craft fair or with your grandkids or for a birthday party project. They're just so cute and easy to make, and I really like the way they turn out. We're even gonna be dyeing our own ribbon for closures. Let me just show you the ones that we are going to make, and it's really quite inexpensive too. Now, because we're gonna be working with some super strong glue and some fabric dye, we are going to make a mess. So I recommend you wear gloves or you use a lava soap. Lava is our sponsor today. They are wonderful. This soap, and I have really dry skin, this soap will take the ink, the glue, everything off of my hands and leave them nice and soft. So if you don't want to be contributing rubber gloves to the landfill every time you do a craft project, give this a try. It's wonderful, and a bar will last you a long time, much longer than a box of rubber gloves, and it's cheaper too. So without further ado, let's go to the table, and I'm going to take you through this project step by step. For this project, you're going to need some clear glass tiles or flat-backed marbles, some strong clear glue. I'm using 3D Gallery Gloss, and I like this because it has a brush applicator right in it, but you could also use diamond glaze or any clear strong glue. And first I'm going to show you how you can do a little bit of a collage design. So first I'm taking a piece of scrapbook paper, and I'm adding some of the glue. And then I can put any sort of pressed flower in there that I want. I just wanted to show you that full sheet because it was so pretty. I found this little pressed shamrock with my other pressed flowers, and I'm just going to set that onto my glued paper. And then I'm going to apply a layer of glue on the back of my glass tile. Try to keep glue off of your fingertips if you can when you're doing this, otherwise you'll have to remove glue off the front of your tiles later, and it's just a little time consuming. So after you've got a thin coat of glue on the tile, press it down. Make sure there's no air bubbles, so just give it a good press. And then you're going to let it dry. And here I have a couple that are all dried. If you have something thick like the piece I did with the little rosebud and fern there, you're going to want to put it on something soft like a mouse pad and put something heavy on it to weigh it down so that the paper bonds. You can see on the back how thick that element is. I wouldn't recommend using really thick elements, but you can if you want to. Now, if you just have pattern paper without any collage elements, it's even easier. All you need to do is put the glue on the tile, the paper can stay dry, and then you just press that tile right onto the paper that you want to magnify and seal into your little dome here. And that's all there is to that. So you can make use of those pretty pattern scrapbook papers like I have here that look like postage stamps. You could use real postage stamps. Any of those special papers that you've been hoarding over the years are perfect for this project because they'll last forever after you make this project. I recommend making up a bunch of these tiles if you're going to make this project because even though it's not a real time-consuming project, there is a lot of waiting in between steps, so you might as well get a bunch done at once. While my tiles were drying, I decided to hand dye some seam binding to work as the necklace cord. I love to use Rayon seam binding because after you dye it, it takes on this beautiful wrinkled texture which is vintage and I think would be a lovely complement to our tiles. So before you dye your seam binding to be used in a jewelry project, you want to make sure you fix the dye. So in that bowl, I have very hot water and table salt. I would say about a tablespoon of salt to probably 4 cups of water would suffice. And I'm using Dr. Ph Martin Radiant Watercolors for my dye. That particular product can be used as a fabric dye as long as you have a mordant, which is salt and water in my case. It will be color fast on your fabric. I've also tried vinegar, soda ash, as mordants, and I found that the salt, plain old salt, worked the best. So you just want to soak it in there, get it saturated, and wring out the excess water. Now, if I was doing this for card making, I would just spray it with any old water and dye it, and it would be fine. But since I'm going to rinse this ribbon after I dye it to make sure there's no extra color, I want to make sure that the color is going to bond to the fabric. And that's what the Radiant sets look like. This is set A, and I found the colors in set A to be a little bit nicer if you're trying to do vintage looking projects, but you can use whatever colors you want, and you can also get those individually, or you could use any old fabric dye or a tie dyeing kit. For a small project like this, those little bottles of ink work very well, but if you're going to do a big batch, then get a tie dyeing kit. It will be a lot cheaper. So when I put the ink on, I don't want it to be a solid color. I want it a little variegated. So I just put it on a few drops and I kind of work it around with my fingertips until I have it colored about the way that I want. You can kind of see you've got a little bit of a batik look there. That's what I'm going for. So at this point, I want to set that outside to dry and repeat that for any other colors that I want. I ended up repeating those steps to make about 5 or 6 different colored ribbons, and then I put them outside to dry, and I let the ribbon dry completely before I rinse them out. So my hands are kind of a mess, so I'm going to start just by rinsing off my hands and just seeing if regular old, hand soap will do the trick, because I like to have something to compare it with. Now the hand soap will take off the residual ink, the stuff that's not sunk in yet, but you can see that my fingers are still pretty well stained. I look like a Smurf. So here comes the power of pumice and lava soap, and I keep a bar of this under both of my sinks because I find that every day I seem to be getting into ink, whether I'm rubber stamping or working with fabric dyes or acrylic paints or glues, and the lava does get it off of my hands without damaging my skin. My skin is extremely dry, and I find that this does not dry it out anymore. So it works great for me, and maybe it will work good for you too. Otherwise, you could wear gloves if you remember to put them on before you start your project. Or sometimes I found that if I'm going to hand wash my dishes or wash my hair, the ink will come off of my hands, but I'm not washing my hair or my dishes every day, so it's nice to know I can grab the lava soap whenever I need to clean the ink or paint off of my hands. Now look at that, clean as a whistle. By now, our glass tiles should be completely dry. It only takes about 30 minutes for the gallery gloss to dry, and you're going to trim away the excess paper. While you trim, make sure you angle your scissors under the glass tile so you undercut the paper a little bit. That will give you a really professional look, and you won't see any paper sticking out from the sides. If you need to, you can go in with an emery board or a sanding sponge and smooth down the edges, but I find you can trim it really well with your scissors most of the time. Now you want to make sure you know what side is up on your pendant, so I'm going to set that on my just piece of scrap plastic there with the head facing up so I don't glue the bail on backwards. And while I'm doing this, I also want to make sure that I'm protecting the back of this. So I'm going to give the back of the pendant a thin coat of the gallery gloss, put a drop of extra glue at the top, and press that silver bail in place. You've got a few minutes to make sure you have it situated just right and centered into the middle of the pendant, and then you're going to let that dry for at least another 30 minutes or overnight. Now here's one that's already dry, and sometimes the glue can drip over the edge or you can get a gluey fingerprint on the front. If that happens to you, simply take a Q-tip and some acetone based fingernail polish remover and just dip it in the acetone and wipe off any glue smudges. Sometimes you have to use a bit. If you get a big drip, you might just need to soften it with the acetone and then scrape it off with your fingernail. I would resist using a razor blade to scrape off any glue because it is such a small tile. I wouldn't want you to cut yourself. So just be a little patient, use the acetone, and that will clean it right up, and there it will be nice and shiny and pretty. So now all you have to do is use your ribbon to make your necklace. So I'm just taking about 30 inches of ribbon, and when I measure it slack, so I'm not stretching it out. The ribbon will have a little stretch to it, which will be nice because it'll be most likely to fit anyone, and then I just tied the ends together and trimmed off the edge. Now don't forget, after you've dyed your ribbon and you've let it dry, rinse it out. Rinse out the excess dye and let it dry again. Because this is meant to be worn, you just want to make sure that nobody's going to end up dyeing their skin when they wear your beautiful creation. And there you can see them all in a tray, so pretty. I think this would be a great craft fair item or birthday party project to do with a group of girls. It's so much fun and they're so easy to make. I want to thank Lava Soap for sponsoring our video today. You can find them online. I'll have a link in the video description, and you really should have a bar of this under your kitchen sink because it will get out whatever you get into. Thank you so much for watching. Please give me a thumbs up before you go. Until next time, happy crafting.